There is a gentle hum in the world, a constant static of expectation, connection, and noise. For many, this is the sound of life, but for some, it is a low, persistent drain. They feel a pull, not away from the world, but towards something else, towards the quiet, towards the self. This is not the ache of loneliness which seeks a person. This is the deep, cellular craving for solitude which seeks a center. It is the need to close the door, to dim the lights, and to finally hear in the resulting silence the sound of one's own mind. It is the necessary return. It begins not as a thought, but as a feeling, a slow, tidal pull. It is the sensation of one's own energy draining, like water receding from a shoreline, pulled by a force you cannot see. In the middle of a conversation, a meeting, or a crowded room, a sudden, invisible threshold is crossed. The sounds of the world, which were just moments ago a coherent part of life, become noise. The voices of others, the expectation to respond, the simple act of performing self, begins to feel impossibly heavy. It is a kind of sensory and emotional saturation. Every word taken in is one word too many. Every new glance feels like an intrusion. This is not a failure of character. It is not coldness or arrogance or a lack of care. It is a profound biological need. We often confuse this craving for solitude with simple introversion. The introvert, we are told, recharges with alone time. But this is something more primal. It is not just a preference, it is a necessity. It is the spiritual equivalent of the need for oxygen. For the person who craves solitude, the world is a place of constant low-level static. And after a time, that static builds until it becomes deafening, drowning out the one voice they are truly trying to hear, their own. This pull is a form of self-preservation. It is the nervous system sending a clear, undeniable signal. Enough performance, enough translating, enough absorbing the emotions and expectations of others. The self has become diluted, scattered amongst the day's interactions, and it must be gathered back. The quiet room is a metaphor, though a physical room often helps. It is a closing of the door, not just to a space, but to the demands of the world. It is the permission to stop, to let the mask dissolve, to exist for a moment for no one else. In this space, the mind can finally begin its work. The tangled knots of the day's conversations can be gently undone. The fragmented pieces of thought can be laid out and looked at. This is not an escape from life. It is an escape to life. It is a necessary pilgrimage back to the center. Without it, the individual begins to feel unreal. They become a collection of responses, a mirror reflecting everyone else, but with no image of their own. They may smile and nod and function, but inside they have gone quiet, saving what little energy remains. The craving for solitude is the soul's deep desire to defragment. It is the search for a signal that is clear, authentic, and whole. It is the understanding that to be a good friend, a good partner, or a good human to others, one must first be a present and coherent human to oneself. This pull, this ache for quiet, is the first and most honest step in that return. It is the deep, restorative breath after holding it for far too long. This profound need for stillness is not born in adulthood. It is an echo, an old, familiar pattern learned when the self was first forming. Look back. You will often find a child who was a quiet observer, the one who felt the world more intensely than others, the one for whom the volume of life, the lights, the sounds, the unspoken tensions between adults was turned up too high. This is the sensitive child who learned early that the world could be overwhelming. For this child, solitude was not a punishment, as it was for others. It was a refuge. It was the only place the static would stop. You might also find the performer child, the one who learned that love and approval were conditional. They were the mature one, the good student, the peacemaker. They were always managing the emotional temperature of the room, translating the needs of one parent to another, or performing the role of the perfect, untroubled child. This is an exhausting full-time job. Their outer life was a constant expenditure of energy. For this child, their bedroom was not just a room. It was a backstage. It was the only place the costume could come off. 18, the only place they could stop holding their breath. It was here they discovered a secret. Their own company was restorative. Their inner world was a place of safety and freedom that the outer world, with its complex rules and high stakes, could not offer. This is where the craving is first wired into the nervous system. The child discovers that in solitude, they can finally process what they have absorbed. The confusing interactions of the day, the feelings of others that cling to them, the pressure to be someone, all of it can be laid out, examined, and understood only in the quiet. The inner world becomes rich and populated. It is filled with books, with daydreams, with the deep, uninterrupted flow of imagination. This is not the emptiness of loneliness. It is the fullness of a private, sovereign universe. This child learns to self-soothe, to self-reflect, and to find a stable center inside themselves. They become their own first and most reliable source of comfort. And so, the adult who craves solitude is not broken. They are simply returning to a strategy that has always worked. The adult who feels drained after a social gathering is the echo of the child who came home from school and needed an hour of absolute silence to feel human again. The adult who feels guilt for canceling plans is the echo of the child who felt torn between the desire to play with others and the even deeper need to simply be. This craving is not a sign of being antisocial. It is a sign of being pro-self. It is the legacy of a child who, out of necessity, creativity, or sensitivity, cultivated a deep and lasting friendship with their own mind. That original quiet room of their childhood became a permanent, portable architecture they carry with them for life. The need to retreat is simply the deep muscle memory of returning to the only place they ever felt completely and unconditionally whole. Chapter 3, The Mind in Restoration. This persistent pull towards quiet is not a weakness. It is a biological imperative, as real as thirst or hunger. It is the language of a nervous system that is not broken, but finely tuned. For many who crave solitude, the world is experienced with a rare intensity. This is often described as sensory processing sensitivity, a trait where the brain processes information more deeply. Every light is a little brighter, every sound is more complex, and every emotional current in a room is felt and absorbed. This is not a disorder, it is a feature. It allows for great empathy, creativity, and a rich inner life. But it comes at a cost. The cognitive load of simply existing, is higher. The mind is like a high-resolution sensor capturing terabytes of data, while others are capturing megabytes. Social interaction, in particular, is the most complex data stream we encounter. It is a constant, high-bandwidth act of processing. We are not just hearing words, we are reading micro-expressions, decoding tone, monitoring our own responses, and navigating the unspoken needs of others. For the person wired for solitude, this battery drains faster. They reach a point of cognitive saturation far sooner than others. The feeling of being done is not a social preference. It is a processing limit. When this limit is reached, the mind must switch modes. It must move from intake to integration. This is where the neuroscience of solitude becomes so clear. When we are alone, free from external stimuli, the brain's default mode network, DMN, finally has a chance to activate. We often think of this as zoning out, but it is one of the most important states our mind can enter. The DMN is the brain's internal architect, its librarian, and its therapist. When the DMN is active, the mind begins its restorative work. It sifts through the day. It takes the emotional experiences that were shelved in the moment, the quick comment from a colleague, the brief flash of sadness, the unresolved tension, and finally processes them. It connects new information to old memories, allowing for insight and aha moments. It is in this state that we consolidate our own sense of self. We detach from the roles we played, the employee, the friend, the partner, and reconnect with the person who exists beneath them. This is the defragmentation we crave. Without it, the mind becomes cluttered. Unprocessed emotions and experiences pile up like unread mail, leading to a low, persistent hum of anxiety, irritability, or a strange, disconnected numbness. We feel overwhelmed, but we can't pinpoint why. The craving for solitude, then, is the body's intelligent signal that this vital internal maintenance is overdue. It is the mind's request for the time and space it needs to file away the day, to heal the small paper cuts of social interaction, and to recalibrate its own compass. It is not an escape from reality. It is the necessary biological process of making sense of reality so that one can return to it whole. Chapter 4. The Guilt of Withdrawing. The need has become undeniable. The internal battery is not just low, it is flashing red. The pull toward the quiet room is no longer a gentle suggestion. It is a desperate gravitational force. And so, the choice is made. You send the text message, you make the phone call, you offer the polite excuse. I'm so sorry I can't make it. I'm not feeling well. I'm just too tired. And as the relief of reclaimed time washes over, it is immediately followed by a cold, familiar shadow: guilt. This is the central conflict for the one who craves solitude. The deep, internal battle between the non-negotiable need for self-preservation and the equally deep human desire to connect, to belong, and to not disappoint others. The world is not built for this need. Society is structured around the visible, the communal, and the external. It rewards presence. It equates showing up with caring. And in this economy of constant availability, the act of withdrawing is seen as a deficit.
Rejection.
It is interpreted as rejection, disinterest, or even hostility. Your need for quiet is read as your judgment on them. This misunderstanding is the source of the guilt. When you say, "I am too tired," you mean something profound. You mean, my senses are saturated, my mind is full, and I have no self left to give. But what the other person often hears is, "I do not value you enough to make the effort." You are not being antisocial. You are trying to manage a finite resource that others seem to have in abundance. You are not being selfish. You are performing the necessary silent work of refilling a well that the world has drained. Yet the accusations, spoken or unspoken, land heavily. You're a hermit. You're flaky. Are you depressed? After a lifetime of this, you internalize the judgment. You begin to believe it. A part of you worries that you are broken, that you are a bad friend, a difficult partner, a deficient human. You feel shame for having limits that others do not appear to have. You watch them move from one social event to the next, seemingly energized by the very things that deplete you. And you ask yourself, what is wrong with me? This guilt becomes a heavy, invisible tax you pay for your own nature. It makes you apologize for your boundaries. It makes you over-explain, creating elaborate, socially acceptable excuses because the simple, honest truth, I need to be alone, feels too harsh, too rejecting, too strange. This inner conflict is exhausting. It is a constant negotiation between your own survival and the fear of relational isolation. You live with the quiet, persistent anxiety of being misunderstood. The tragedy is that your retreat is not an act of aggression, but an act of restoration. It is the only way you know how to gather yourself, to process the world, and to return to your relationships as a whole, present, and authentic person. But in the moment of withdrawing, it feels to you and to the world like a failure. Chapter 5, Solitude versus Loneliness. There is a profound failure in our language. We use the word alone to describe two entirely opposite human experiences. One is loneliness, the other is solitude. Because we have confused them, we have pathologized a need that is as vital as air. Loneliness is a state of lack. It is the ache of an empty chair, the silence of an unringing phone. It is the painful awareness of an absent other. Loneliness is a feeling of severance, a hunger for connection that is not being met. It is involuntary. It is a wound. It is the feeling of being stranded. Solitude is a state of presence. It is the experience of being full. It is the quiet, humming energy of being occupied entirely by one's own mind. Solitude is not an absence, but a deep and generative connection, a connection to the self. It is a deliberate, chosen state of restoration. It is not a wound. It is the quiet, clean room where wounds are tended to. It is the feeling of being centered. The great turning point in the life of the person who craves solitude is when this distinction lands, not as an intellectual idea, but as a deep physical truth. It is a moment of profound, quiet revelation. The guilt that has followed them for decades, the shame of withdrawing, the fear of being seen as cold, broken, or antisocial, finally begins to lose its power. They look at their past, at all the canceled plans, the closed doors, the moments of silent retreat, and they see it not as a history of failure, but as a history of survival. They realize, I am not running from life. I am running to the source of my life. They understand that their need is not a social failing. It is a spiritual and psychological necessity. They are not rejecting the world. They are processing it. They are not rejecting others. They are trying to find a way to meet them as a whole person rather than as a collection of fragmented, exhausted roles. This is the moment they stop apologizing for their own operating system. The endless, fabricated excuses, the headaches, the feeling unwell, the vague claims of being too busy begin to fall away. They are replaced by a simple, quiet, and non-negotiable truth. I need time to myself. This statement, once so fraught with the fear of another's disappointment, becomes an act of simple fact. It is no longer an apology. It is an explanation. It is not a rejection, but a clarification. It is an act of deep reverence for the self. In this realization, they discover that solitude is not a wall that separates them from others. It is a garden. It is the fertile, private ground where their own thoughts can take root, where their own feelings can be identified and honored. It is where they generate the energy, the clarity, and the presence that they will eventually bring back into the world. They learn that you cannot pour from an empty vessel. Solitude is the act of filling that vessel. It is not an escape from connection, but the necessary, restorative pilgrimage for it. Chapter 6. The Shape of a Different Connection. When the guilt of withdrawing dissolves, something new takes its place. A quiet confidence. The healing begins, not when the world finally understands, but when the individual stops waiting for its permission. This acceptance changes the architecture of a life. The person who craves solitude no longer drifts passively toward social burnout, pulled by the currents of obligation and the fear of missing out. Instead, they become a conscious curator of their own energy and time. They learn to stop saying yes when their entire nervous system is screaming no. They learn that no is not a word of rejection, but a word of profound self-allegiance. And in a great and beautiful paradox, this no makes their yes infinitely more valuable. This is the great shift from quantity of connection to quality. In their old life, driven by guilt, they would show up, but they were never fully present. They were the person at the party, smiling and nodding, while mentally they were already home. They were rationing their energy, offering a diluted, half-lit version of themselves, reserving that last precious 10% for their own survival. This was not connection. It was performance. It was a lie, told with the kindest of intentions. The person who has integrated their need for solitude no longer does this. When they choose to be with you, they are with you. They are not glancing at their watch or planning their escape. Because they have honored their need for restoration, they arrive at the interaction with a full well. They can listen, not from a place of defense, but from a place of genuine curiosity. They are not performing. They are simply there. This is the shape of their different connection. It is deeper, more resonant, and more authentic. They may trade a dozen superficial, obligatory gatherings for one deep conversation. They may have fewer friends, but the bonds they share are stronger, built on the honest foundation of their true capacity. Their boundaries become clear, but they are no longer the armed, electrified fences of a person under siege. They are the clear, calm lines of a garden, defining what is theirs and what is not. They can state their needs without apology. I would love to see you, but I don't have the energy for a crowd tonight. Could we have a quiet dinner instead? Or, I need this weekend to myself to recharge, but I am free next week and would love to be fully present with you then. This honesty is a revelation. It is a profound form of respect, both for the self and for the other. It teaches the world how to treat them. People in their life learn that their presence is a choice, not an obligation. They learn that their yes is a real enthusiastic yes, and their no is a simple, non-personal fact. They are no longer a chameleon, exhausted from trying to match the energy of every room. They have become instead a source. Their solitude is the quiet, hidden place where they generate the light they are now able to share intentionally and without resentment. It is no longer the enemy of their relationships. It is the very thing that makes them possible. Chapter 7. The Fullness of the Empty Space. We are taught to fear the empty spaces, the silent moment in a conversation, the blank page, the empty room. We rush to fill them with words, with music, with tasks, with people. We have come to associate emptiness with lack and silence with the cold void of loneliness. But for the one who has made peace with their nature, this emptiness is a word of profound misunderstanding. They have learned a different truth. They have learned that what the world calls empty is, in fact, full. Solitude is not an absence. It is a presence. It is the presence of the self in its most undiluted form. When the external voices fade, when the demands of others recede, when the roles and masks of the day are set down, what is left? Not a void. What is left is a singular, clear, and quiet energy. It is the sound of one's own mind, finally at a volume that can be heard. It is the texture of one's own emotions, uncolored by the need to manage those of others. This space is not empty. It is fully and deeply occupied. It is a landscape, a vast, quiet, internal terrain that is uniquely one's own. To the outside observer, a person sitting alone in a room appears to be doing nothing. But inside, a universe is being tended to. Thoughts are being followed to their true conclusions. Ideas are connecting. The subtle, quiet signals of intuition, long drowned out by the static of the world, can finally be felt. This is not a barren landscape. It is a generative one. It is the soil from which creativity, clarity, and compassion grow. It is the place where the raw data of life is metabolized into wisdom. It is the still, deep water where the sediment of the day can finally settle, revealing a profound and steady calm. The silence of solitude is not the silence of a tomb. It is the silence of a library. It is the silence of a forest. It is a living, breathing quiet, brimming with potential. It is the necessary canvas. The artist cannot paint on a canvas already covered in the work of others. The mind is the same. It requires a clean, quiet, sovereign space to create the next day's meaning. This is the ultimate realization. Craving for solitude is not a desire to end connection. It is the desire to find its source. It is not a wish to disappear. It is the deep cellular need to finally and truly appear to oneself. To return to the quiet room is to return to the origin point. It is to sit in the fullness of that empty space and feel the simple, sacred, and profound relief of existing. No performance, no apology, no defense. It is not an escape from life. It is the place where life is most deeply met. It is the home for the self. And in that quiet, unassuming, and sacred space, it is, at last, enough.